Thanks, Martin. It's nice to be here again. As you heard yesterday from me, I'm more related to the academia part, leading the VDC program in Switzerland. And the motivation for me to move over to the academia was after 20 years of experience in design and construction. I thought it could be good to investigate the mechanisms behind the work we do a little bit deeper. And I was and still am curious and keen about seeing what's happening behind our industry, so investigating the mechanisms and drive our industry forward towards a better productivity. 50-50, so that's the percentage that I use at academia and practice. My wife would not agree on that. She would say maybe it's 60 and 60 or 70 and 70. Depends on when you ask her. But at the end, it's quite inspiring to see how both parts should work together and fit together. That is what we also heard yesterday, right? So academia and practice should work closer together. But when you look a little bit closer, and this is also my experience from one and the other side, when you talk as an academia people to practice, they say, yeah, you're the theoretical guy, and maybe we know it, how it works in practice. And when I talk to my colleagues at the academia, they say, yeah, practice should watch a little bit better to us. We know how the theory works. So I'm standing in between those two, and I think this project, which I show you right now, explains how, or maybe shows how the theoretical approach really worked well to help people making decisions based on integrated information, right? Because I think people from academia and from practice agree that you should not make any decision without considering all the information that you need to make this decision. So my mission then, I like the definition of theory from the book Factory Physics, because it combines both aspects from the side of the theory, but the theory is nothing worse if you not consider the practice, so you have to prove the evidence, otherwise it's not a theory. So please be careful in the future when you call something a theory. It has to be proven by the practice. And when the customer came to me with this, I would say, really large project in Swiss dimension, 300,000 square meters or 38 hectares, he was asking me, do we have a software to use this or to solve this problem? We have to combine all the information and make sure that we have reliable decisions along this transformation phase of the next 15 years. And we did some research, and we came out that at least we haven't seen any software or service in the market that could help us with this challenge. So then we came to the conclusion we must modeling all the information that we need for the decisions right from scratch, and to combine it with our own software solution. So that means we created open data IFC format and used Power BI to display what we have done. So this is the project close to Basel, or in the middle of Basel, I would say one of the 4 largest cities in Switzerland. The project is located in the heart of the city, so that means we develop a city in the city. As you have seen on the slide before, we have quite 7,500 people who will live there and over 8,000 people who will work there, so this is quite, in Swiss dimension, a city in the city. And if you look a little bit closer, and you can see where it is located, when we turn the city a little bit around. So it's quite in the heart where all the neighborhood and the different people who live there have influence in the design. So for the next few minutes, we will look a little bit closer to one specific part, because I would say the whole district is a little bit too complex to show all the information, but the basic idea was to have light models, so as much information as we need for the decision, but building not too heavy models instead of bringing all the information into it. And I will go later on a little bit into detail what kind of model we built there and how we managed them. One of the challenges was and still is that the client is not the client as one word, so there are many faces behind the client. We have the property owner, we have the investor who spends the money, and of course he wants to have some money back sooner or later. And there's the neighborhood, there's the city administration and so forth. That means we have a lot of things to consider when it comes to the decision, especially for the investors. They want to have the money back, but they cannot react without considering any other aspects of the neighborhood and the city needs. One of the second challenge, or another challenge, I would not say there are only two, but I picked out two. Of course, we have a lot of information of this district, but at the end, all the information is, as in many projects or archives in Switzerland, they are documented in 2D, and of course in paper. So the first approach was just to link or to scan in or to digitize the paper and link the PDF to the relevant object. So this could be one of the approaches, and we immediately saw that this is maybe not the best solution, so we needed more of the data out of the documents directly into the model. That means the second approach was more to digitize the relevant information from the 2D drawings or from the 2D PDFs, which can also be contracts and other documents, into a really light model. And therefore, we decided to have a three-step procedure. So the first step is to create a volume study. That means, therefore, we can have all the aspects from the different stakeholders related to the visual part, so that makes the city looks good as possible in the future. And then we modeled the different stages of the transformation phase. That means what has to be transformed first and what goes second. And third, the different types of usage. So before it was an industrial district, and afterwards it's going to be a work and living space for so many people. That means we have to be careful about what kind of usage is where and when, in many terms and many reasons. Because the investor, of course, they want to have the money back, but at the end you have to have a good neighborhood and also a good mixture of different uses. This, if you cannot read it, it's not because of your eyes or you have maybe too much coffee. It's just real data, and I was not allowed to show the real numbers in public, so we blurred it out. But this is the place where we combine all the information to make sure that all the decisions are made based off integrated information. And what does that mean? I can show you in the following slides. So you will see how we built the different models. But first, before we start into that, I would like to show you a mechanism that we think is quite important to make those decisions based on the integrated information. And I would love to have feedback later on during the panel discussion, or maybe also in person one-to-one afterwards. So what we can see here is like the dependency of cost and time. You can see on stage one, you have to develop the whole place. That means you have to put some money in and hire people, consultants, to design everything, maybe on the light base. Then you have to design, starting planning. And then that's number two. And then number three, sometimes developers sell properties to others. That means there's an exit point, number three, you have the money back. But later on, there's construction, and you have to spend some more money, number four, and then you maybe sell the property after that stage, then you have some more money that you can earn, number 5. But then during life cycle, you have the money back by renting or leasing the properties. That means the influence of the decision in design and development has an influence to the life cycle after handover. Those are the curves on number 5, or the lines, of course. That means we can have influence on 3 points: the time when we hand over the building, and the building is going to be used and it's going to be pay back the money. Number 5.1, so this is dependent on how good we made decisions in development and design. As better as the decisions are, as sooner 5.1 is, as better is the return on invest. That means we have this triangle here, and the only thing that we can have influence is defining the degrees of this angle. There's a second triangle here. We try to steer that with a good design, and according to the design also involving construction, early contractor involvement, design build, to have that angle, the second angle, as much close as possible. And of course, more and more the carbon footprint discussion comes into our projects, and therefore is another dimension, which is here in a symbolic schematic figure, having CO2 in the project. So of course, less CO2 during design, a little bit more in construction, but still there, if you take influence during development and later on in design, you can have that curve as steep or maybe not so steep, depending on your decisions. That means there's a third triangle that you can have influence during the early stages, and of course a third angle that you should have as close or as not so steep as possible. So this is the challenge that we face, and the investor try, of course, to have the area of the first triangle as small as possible, to have the money back as soon as possible. But if you look from an environmental perspective, you want to have also the lowest carbon footprint as possible. Now let's take a closer look to the models. Here you can see the first model that we use. This is the groundwater level. It's the low, the medium, and the high level. You will see later on why we need those 3 levels. And of course, we have the solid rock. So this is where the whole city is built on. This is something that you can go back and rely on. But then we have also the soil, that we have different pollutions, because the industrial area there was a little bit was chemical pollution in the ground. And depending on the color that you can see here, you have to decide if you build a parking garage there, you have to clean the soil before you excavate and build a building. That means decision number 1 could be, let's move out all the soil and clean it and bring it back, so that would be very expensive. Another decision that you can take is you can find spots where you can build your buildings without cleaning the soil or so much soil to avoid a lot of costs. So this is another perspective, and as you can see here, the footprint of the buildings is quite something that you have to consider, because otherwise it's not given that you have to make the right choice. Oh, sorry. Back to that, because here you can see the transformation phase of the buildings. That means we have the footprints of the existing building, which you can see right now. Now you can see the existing buildings with the footprint from 2 different investors, and of course we're going to transform the whole district into a a new usage. That means we're going to tear the buildings down and build them from scratch. How did we build, or how did we build that model from the geology, which is quite important for making the decisions? There were over 1,000 drilling profiles. Normally they are documented in that PDF that you can see on the left. And those drilling profiles were the basic to define those drilling profiles in a three-dimensional way. And then with this information, we generated the geology model to voxel-based to have the best information as possible to make those decisions. And as I can say here, this investment pays off already, because if you can avoid 1 cubic meter of cleaning the soil, it's quite, yeah, it's even. Here, as in addition what we have seen before, you can also see the different trees and existing buildings. This is the design, the development design that we have planned to transform the city, and this is how it will look like in the future. So often people are asking, are the trees really important? Yes, they are important, because if you will cut down 1 tree, you have to pay roughly 10,000 Swiss francs, which is equal to the US dollars. So then you have to rebuild the tree. So that's something that is in the law. You have to rebuild the tree. That means you have to consider also the different trees to make sure that you have made the right decisions. Here you can also see the different servitudes. That means the right and obligation from the different plot owners to each other. We have to also consider that, because during the transformation phase, the plot owner will make sure that they have still those obligations and rights to use the district. Of course, all the information about the supply and waste, and we have also the different bicycle routes, which of course are necessary to supply the public transportation, which is shown here. Yeah, and at the end, hopefully it will look like that. We have, that's the last one. We have also considered that the city has to be like a sponge to suck up the moisture, or to bring back the moisture in winter. So this is it. A summary: integrated information visualization. I think this is absolutely key to make holistic decisions. So managing different interests is difficult anyway. And last but not least, more information you can integrate, as better the decisions are, of course. Thanks.